focused on an introduction to communicating the role of nuclear energy in clean energy systems for young professionals. Before we begin, I'll quickly go over some of the webinar features. For audio, you have two options. You may either listen through your computer or over your telephone. If you choose to listen through your computer, please select the mic and speakers option in the audio pane. If you choose to dial in by phone, please select the telephone option, and the box on the right side will display the telephone number and audio pin you should use to dial in. If anyone is having technical difficulties with the webinar, you may contact GoToWebinar's help desk. If you would like to ask a question, we ask that you please use the questions pane, where you may type in your question on the right-hand side of your screen. Also, the recording of today's presentation will be added to YouTube at the link provided in the slide. Please see that afterwards and also in your registration email. Today's webinar is part of the Nice Future initiative that will be introduced by Carrie Edwards. Today's discussion touches on themes that are very important to our initiative and are intended for young professionals working in nuclear and nuclear science related fields. Now I would like to introduce our first two speakers of our panel today. First up is Carrie Edwards, who is a senior advisor for the Office of Nuclear Energy at the U.S. Department of Energy. Carrie will be giving us a brief overview of the Nice Future initiative. Throughout the webinar, you will also see Carrie's contact information on the slides. Please reach out via email and share your stories with us. Following Carrie, we will hear from Jeremy Gordon, who is the director at Fluent Energy. Jeremy will be introducing us to our panel of storytellers today from IYNC and helping to moderate the discussion. And with those brief introductions, I would like to welcome Carrie to the webinar, followed by Jeremy.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. On behalf of the Nuclear Innovation Clean Energy Future, the Nice Future team, we welcome you to today's webinar, which is part of the Nice Future Initiative webinar series. I'd like to give a warm welcome to those joining, especially to our IYNC and other young professionals from all around the world. We have many countries represented here today, as well as those on this call who joined us to support the mentorship of a new generation of talent in the nuclear sector. As Jordan mentioned, my name is Carrie Edwards. I'm a senior advisor to the U.S. Department of Energy, leading communications strategy and mainstream media relations to get positive stories out there about nuclear and its innovations, as well as market research under the great leadership of Susie Jaworowski and Ed McGinnis. Last year in May in Copenhagen, thanks to the leadership of U.S. Secretary of Energy Rick Perry and his fellow Nice Future Lead Country ministers from Canada and Japan, the Nice Future Initiative was launched. Nuclear energy became included as an official part of a clean energy ministerial called CEM, Conversation on Clean Energy. The CEM is the sole global organization that forges collaboration exclusively on clean energy at the ministerial level. So this is a big deal, a big opportunity for us to tell our story. As nuclear provides about 1/3 of non-emitting electricity globally, it's about time. Exciting innovations are on the horizon, game changers. Nuclear can operate more flexibly in harmony with renewable energy. The initiative has empowered a new conversation about nuclear innovations and nuclear energy's roles or potential roles within the context of clean energy systems of the future. It has sparked the imagination of those in the nuclear community and outside it, and has engaged representatives from more than 35 countries and 80 organizations in transformational conversations about nuclear power's innovations, its uses, and potential contributions to society. Our Nice Future team is currently gearing up for the next Clean Energy Ministerial, CEM, and Mission Innovation meetings later in May, the 27th and 29th through 29th in Vancouver, Canada. One of the key areas of the initiative is communications and also developing and retaining a bright, dynamic, and diverse workforce of the future. We invite all young voices to be heard. As we begin today's interactive meeting with Jeremy and our IYNC participants, it's important for us to focus on how we can most effectively communicate about the important game-changing innovations in nuclear energy and the story that you have to tell in your role. So think about what your story might be, and please email it to me. We look for young folks to participate in our clean energy talks and events all over the world. What research does tell us is that facts and information can change minds and command attention. So we've recently tested 25 facts relating to safety, waste management, innovation. And the most important thing we found from that survey was that with that information, people's minds were changed. So it's important that we get the information out there and understand its power, and how we tell the story matters. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Finally, I'm reminded of a favorite book of mine. It's Malcolm Gladwell's The Tipping Point. It's about how a few people can change many minds. We truly are at a tipping point in nuclear energy innovations. And he wrote this, which applies to us. Look at the world around you. It may seem like an immovable, implaceable place. It's not. With the slightest push in just the right place, it can be tipped. And with that, I turn it over to Jeremy from Fluent About Energy, who has built a compelling model for storytelling that we will demonstrate and apply today. Over to you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Kari. Thank you, Jordan. I'm really glad to be here. Yep. My name's Jeremy Gordon. I'm a communication consultant with my company, Fluent in Energy. I've been a communicator in the nuclear industry for about 15 years in different roles. And I found it to be a really interesting place because from a point of view within the nuclear industry, it feels really, really big. Because the companies that own and operate and take responsibility for the power plants are very big and they're very serious. The regulation is broad and deep, it's detailed, it's very far-sighted. The timelines go a long way into the future. The systems for international governance and security are taken extremely seriously, and the technology itself is big and heavy and expensive. Everyone around you is highly qualified, serious, and so professional. Everything about it takes a really long time. And even on top of all that, nuclear has a very serious role in energy production. Each nuclear plant is first and foremost a powerhouse for electricity, and it's also a powerhouse for the local and the national economy. All that makes it very, very strategic for a country. The unseen component of nuclear power is also very important. The fossil fuels and the pollution that nuclear power helps us to avoid are just as big as its direct benefits. The incredible resource efficiency of nuclear energy is one of the main reasons it was developed. It's one of nuclear power's key unique advantages. That's because one pellet of nuclear fuel, as small as the end of your finger, can give us the same energy as a ton of coal. But what is a key advantage for nuclear is also a kind of weakness. Because a little bit of uranium goes such a long way, it means we don't need very much. And around the world, the total annual need for uranium is about 60,000 tons. So it might sound like a lot to you or me, but it really isn't. Because that amount of uranium could be loaded easily onto just one ship like this. And it's not even a very big one by modern standards. So what this means is that although nuclear power seems very big to us and has an outsized strategic role in a country's energy supply, it actually has a surprisingly small physical presence. Nuclear energy doesn't have the extensive logistical supply chains and support industries that the fossil fuels do, or even that renewable sources do. And it's not an everyday sight like a solar panel on rooftops or wind turbines that we all see from the road. So it's all a matter of perspective. Most people in the world don't have an up-close view of nuclear. They see it from a long way away, or they don't see it at all. And having never seen it with their own eyes or set foot inside a real nuclear power plant, they don't have a very realistic idea about it. Their ideas are based on what they've heard. And that's what society tells them, what they've seen in TVs, in the movies, what's in the newspapers. And as we know, there are a lot of wrong ideas, misconceptions, and myths about nuclear, which just go round and round in our society. You can say there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and anxiety around it as well. And that's why I believe it's very important that everyone associated with nuclear energy is able to represent it well as a person. Because when we meet somebody new, that interaction will probably be the only direct experience they will ever have with nuclear power. So it's really important for us to communicate well in those situations and make those conversations really, really good. Now, integral to representing nuclear is to represent ourselves properly. And we have a little exercise here to look at the fundamental things about our work and how we would communicate them to a new person the first time we talk about it. Really, we say you need to know your own story. And I like to break it down into these 4 aspects. First of all, what is actually your role in nuclear power? What do you do? Second, what is it like to be doing that all day? Then, why do you do that? What's actually the purpose of this job? And a little bit of the big picture, how does that fit into the overall society? And lastly, I think it's really important to bring something about yourself that links those things together. So I want to show them to you one by one. And while we're doing that, as Jordan explained, we'd be really grateful if any delegates who've tuned in would think about these things. And perhaps they can craft a little statement of their own. We have an email address to submit if they would like to share. It's Carrie's email address, which was on the slide earlier. I believe it's carrie.edwards@nuclear.energy.gov. So the first aspect, number 1, what do you do?
Jordan Cox, I think you're wanting to share slides. If you wouldn't mind making sure to share your screen if you had slides to present. I apologize.
That is what I've been trying to do. All right, you got it now?
Perfect. It looks great. Thank you.
Very sorry. I didn't click on the right thing. Okay, we've got it just in the right time. So first of all, number 1 in knowing your own story, you've got to think about what do you do? Most of us spend the majority of every day working. It's really important to us because of what we get from it and because of what we put into it. So roles around the nuclear industry or energy in general are usually quite complicated to describe. So we have to develop a way to describe our role in a nutshell and in the plainest English that we can. You have to put yourself in the position of someone who doesn't know any of these technical terms. Second, what is it like to actually do that? Because your job might be unusual, from a public point of view, it's good to give people a feel for it. Think about the sensations, the sights, the sounds of doing your work every day. It just helps them to imagine the scene and understand what you're telling them a little bit more easily. So, are you at the plant site? Are you in an office? Maybe you're in a lab. Are you working on spreadsheets all day, or do you work with your hands? Do you travel? And if you do, is that kind of international or regionally? Perhaps you get to know a lot more about other countries, or maybe you learn about your own country in great detail. Are you meeting new people, or are you on your own? And some sensations like, is it noisy? Is it cold? Is it hot? What's it actually like to sit at your desk all day? Just think about how you can give people a sense of it. Next is a very important question, which is why? Why do you do that? How does it help? This is a really important one. Why are we doing this? Why are we even here? People don't run nuclear power plants for fun. They do it for good reasons and good reasons only. And every job inside the industry is there for a good reason as well. So first of all, just try to take a step back and think, why is your work needed at the plant or in your business? Perhaps if you're somebody who checks checklists needs to be checked and somebody needs to check them. Perhaps those items are a to-do list, and the reason is to be sure that they're done right. So perhaps that's for safety, or that's to fulfill a commitment to a client, or perhaps that's by law. So that's the first level. Then we can go a little bit deeper and try to look at a big picture, and that there's no right or wrong answer. It has kind of a personal aspect for each of us, but the real reason for your work could be economics. For example, to get the plant back up with no delays. The real reason could be because when the nuclear power plant is running well, we're using less coal, and so we're preserving more of the environment. And if the reason is to comply with the law, then you've got to think, you know, why is the law there? Perhaps it's there to make sure that people are safe or that the environment is safeguarded. So you can ask yourself why a few times until you've zoomed out and you can see how your work supports society as a whole. The last thing is to try to come up with some things about yourself that link all these together. Having thought about all these good aspects of your work itself, perhaps there's something about your life, about your background, and your experience that led you to this. Perhaps you were always interested in machines. Perhaps you like meeting people, and that's a big part of your job now. Perhaps you like to work alone or in a team or solving problems, and that's your nature, and your job allows you to do that. Also think, are there any definite choices that you made in your life to get where you are now? Did you commit to a certain route of study? Did you move home to take this job? Perhaps you said no to another career before because this is what you wanted to do. Well, why is that? And a last thing to consider is for some people, there's a key event that leads them on their career path. So what about you? Does that apply? Perhaps there's a family connection to this industry, or maybe a certain science teacher really inspired you when you were young. Maybe you saw something on a TV show that made you really interested in this kind of work. So to take that as a whole, perhaps when you're talking to a new person, if they're struggling to understand what you do as a job, or why it's even needed, they might be able to understand your own reason for doing it, sort of your calling and your personal path in life. They might be able to understand you as a person and how that connects to your work. So that's the essence of the exercise. So all these things help you to describe your work in a much more rounded way than just your job description. They lead to more understanding, and better conversations should follow from them. So we'd be really grateful if any delegates who've tuned in would think about these things and maybe craft a statement of their own. If they'd like to share, as I said before, you can email them to carrie.edwards@nuclear.energy.gov. On screen right now is one example that I came up with. This is the kind of statement that we're looking for. It's extremely brief, but let's read it out. I've always been interested in machines, so I studied mechanical engineering at university. Now I'm on a team that maintains some of the major components in a nuclear power plant. It's pretty serious and technical because we have to be safe, but it feels good to turn on the light and know the electricity is clean. This is the kind of thing that you can say over a restaurant table when you first meet somebody and talk about nuclear. So that's my kind of introduction to the exercise. We already have 4 young professionals on the line who are all members of the International Youth Nuclear Congress. They've generously spent some of their time thinking about these things, and what we're going to do now is hear from them one by one, and Kari and I will react to their story. We'll have a little bit of a discussion. First up is Kristine Madden, an American working in Austria at the International Atomic Energy Agency. Can I hand over to you, Kristine, to hear your story?
Sure, thank you, Jeremy. So I'm a nuclear scientist in the non-proliferation sector, where I verify member state activities to ensure that nuclear material is not being diverted from peaceful to military purposes, and nuclear technology is not being misused. My job is important because it provides confidence to member states and the public that virtuous uses of nuclear science and technology, like clean energy and medical isotope production, are not misused to produce nuclear weapons. It's a very exciting, rewarding, and challenging position that enables me to travel extensively around the world and see the global impact nuclear science and technology has on improving lives through providing clean and reliable electricity via clean energy produced from nuclear power plants, through the application of food irradiation, which makes food safer and lasts longer, and through the production of medical isotopes used to diagnose and treat diseases like cancer.
Thanks, Kristine. What I really get from that is that it's about building confidence, and I really like that that where you work, you're experiencing the whole, wide range of benefits of nuclear energy, and you've got a role that sort of underpins that and builds confidence in the ability of so many countries to take the benefits of nuclear towards, as you said, treating diseases like cancer, looking after people's food supply as well. Do you have a comment, Kari?
Yes, I mean, this is a wonderful story, and thank you, Kristine, for sharing. I have a question for you. What triggered your interest in this, or how did you get involved to begin with?
So in high school, I interned at Ford Motor Company at their research center in engineering. And I'd always been really interested in engineering, and specifically in helping make people's lives better. So originally I was good at math and science, and I thought that I kind of wanted to be a teacher. But then I also became concerned about the future of our environment. And that's why I decided to pursue nuclear engineering, because it provides an opportunity for us to benefit directly in so many different facets of from food production to clean energy to medical isotope production. And so I started working in nuclear power plants, and then I had the opportunity to participate in the Junior Professional Officer Program at the UN in Vienna. And through participating in that program, I had a keen interest in helping drive confidence, because one of the underlying things that I recognized working in the power industry is that we do have a harder time instilling confidence in others, because mainly one of the main issues is they're afraid of nuclear weapon production, so non-proliferation. And my job specifically helps provide confidence to the public in member states that countries aren't doing that, and that they're using nuclear science and technology in versatile and virtuous ways to make life better for their communities.
That's excellent. And it is so abstract to many people. You say any other form of energy, and people know what oil is, they know what coal is, they know the wind blows, they know the sun shines, but when you say nuclear, it's kind of nebulous. And so to give it some greater good context, I think, is a great story.
Mm-hmm. Agree with that very much. And the fear that anything nuclear is a path towards weapons is a very big worry for a lot of people, and it's so good to be able to describe well the systems that prevent that from being the truth. Thank you, Kristine.
Thank you.
Shall we move on? Our next panelist is Fabricia Pineiro from Canada, working in a large engineering company. Are you on the line, Fabricia?
Yes, I'm here, Jeremy. Thank you. Okay, so this is my story. I'm an account manager for SNC-Lavalin's nuclear business unit, where I work in collaboration with our commercial and engineering teams to deliver service proposals to nuclear utilities. What that really means is that I am the single point of contact between the can-do clients that I manage and our company, to ensure that the clients receive timely support for all of their operating needs and requirements. Although I am based in an office location, my work requires me to travel from time to time to visit my clients and also to participate at relevant conferences and trade shows. My job is important because it ensures that our clients' priorities are always taken into consideration and that our company's resources are optimized to deliver the best solutions that we are able to. It is a very exciting job, and it's always changing with tight deadlines and competing priorities. I initially became excited about nuclear when I moved from Peru to Canada and learned so much about the industry and realized that it was a field that had a huge impact in our lives. So I knew then that I had to be a part of it.
You've really saved the best part till the end there. That's the part I'm really interested in. Is there something, so you came from Peru and arrived in Canada.
Yes.
Is there something in particular that really caught your attention when you sort of discovered nuclear power as quite a fundamental thing to the Canadian
yeah,
economy, energy system?
in Ontario, actually, 60% of the electricity is powered by nuclear, whereas in Peru, we don't really have nuclear electricity, unfortunately. So when I first moved from Peru to Canada, I was looking into universities to study industrial engineering until I went and I toured McMaster University, which is the university I ended up going to, who has a research reactor where they produce isotopes, and they have really good, knowledgeable nuclear professors that I was able to talk to, and I just immediately became very passionate about it. So that's when I decided to make a significant change in my original plans and went from industrial to physics engineering, and specifically decided to specialize in nuclear.
Another thing that I like about your story, Fabricia, is that there's a strong business aspect to it. I mean, in Canada, you have so many reactors operating to generate, really significant portion of electricity. That's a commercial activity. Those power plants are doing that. They're being operated by companies, and your company is providing support. And that sometimes we think of these power plants kind of monolithic, but I think the interaction between the companies is very interesting as well, to get a kind of a sight into that.
Yeah, absolutely. The nuclear industry as a whole and all of the different companies that support the utilities is quite large. Particularly in Canada, there are hundreds of companies that provide all kinds of services, from engineering services, field services, also general products and technology or spare parts. So it's quite a big industry, and there are many different roles that various companies play. So it's quite interesting to see the dynamics between all of them.
Do you have a comment, Kari?
Yeah, I have a question. I find that your passion was ignited when you moved to Canada, and I just wonder what you think of in the next 5 years with all the innovations coming into nuclear, between 3D printing of parts and fuels, and what excites you the most about the future of new nuclear?
That's a great question. There are so many very interesting things that are happening right now. 3D modeling and printing, for sure, it's one of them. What I would say personally excites me the most is the incorporation of digital technologies into the nuclear industry, which has been traditionally considered a little bit more on the conservative side. So I'm very excited to see how more companies are actually introducing virtual reality and other kinds of digital technologies to improve not only the design of new technologies, but also the project execution of very large and complex projects. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing these types of technologies being utilized throughout our industry.
That's awesome. Yep.
Okay, shall we move on to our next speaker? Now we have Myra Razali from Malaysia, who's working in stakeholder relations. Are you on the line, Myra?
Yes, I am. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead if you're ready.
Okay, sure. Okay, thanks, Jeremy. So I am a stakeholder relations executive for a national oil and gas company. So previously, I was a public relations practitioner with a niche in nuclear. But as fate would have it, I had to leave the industry. But as much as you take the girl out of nuclear, you can't take nuclear out of the girl. So be that as it may, I see this as an opportunity to affect change in a different industry by slowly creating meaningful conversations on nuclear energy. And you may ask me, why do I do what I do? because to me, this is my vision of moral responsibility, to protect the world in whatever ways I can and ensure that my children will only have the best environment to live in. If anything, we, the current generation, owe this to them.
Wow, that is a super strong moral motivation. And it's very, oh, it's all right. I'm very glad to see it. And it's very notable that this is something that happens a lot around the nuclear industry that I found is people join, and then even if they leave, they still remain interested in it. It kind of is like a nuclear bug that's bitten you. Once you realize the benefits that it can give and how important it is, people don't want to let that go. And you seem like a really good example of that. And I mean, as much as this exercise is mainly about people who are actively working in the industry, it completely applies to somebody in your position as well, who has a previous position and has some expertise in nuclear, but now is in somewhere else. So are you able to affect much change from where you are, do you think?
At the moment, I would say, because I'm still new and I'm grappling myself with the industry at the moment. I'm making baby steps, but I think, you have to have that faith in you. No matter how small, at least you're doing something than not doing anything. And for me, at any and every chance that I get, especially when I engage or we have networking sessions with my colleagues, when they normally ask you questions like, what do you do before you actually join this company? So I took that as I would say, a golden opportunity for me to tell my story on nuclear and share what's going on with the nuclear industry, not just in Malaysia, but all over the world. And I would say so far, I've been getting quite positive reviews, and they were surprised to see that where we're going at with nuclear, and I think it doesn't have to be in a formal context, but just having coffee breaks and there you can actually talk about nuclear. I think slowly but surely we can make that change.
And this is why it's so important to be able to communicate well to other people in a one-to-one basis, because people will listen to and take on new information from people that they relate to and that they understand. And that's why in the exercise that we ran through today, we tried to find some personal reasons and personal motivations and build those into the story. And it's an interesting context, as your colleagues in another industry now, they already know you. These people are ready to listen. So it's great that you're spreading the good information.
Thank you. I mean, this is the best that I can do, because I still have faith. I mean, despite the circumstance that we are facing in Malaysia as far as nuclear energy is concerned, I still have faith that one day this nuclear energy program will be revisited. And I think at least during this time, we should not leave the vacuum. We should not leave it a vacuum open, and we should use this opportunity to try and do and create that conversation on nuclear energy.
It's Kari. I've got a question for you, Myra. Thank you for your story. When you do have the opportunity to network and talk about nuclear, I'm just curious, what's the most surprising thing that people learn from you about how nuclear can be flexible and compatible with other energy systems and sources?
Well, for me, normally the first thing they would be surprised is the fact that I graduated in English literature and I ended up being in the nuclear industry. So that to them was it struck to them as something very interesting. But other than that, for me though, what struck them as interesting is that, for example, for a country like UAE, where it's a major oil and gas exporter, and I try to relate that with Malaysia. So the fact that a country who is an oil and gas producer can actually explore, and now in the midst of like commissioning the plant, and what's stopping us from doing so, and the fact that nuclear is there not to compete with other energy sources. At least in Malaysia, we have, I mean, it's all, at the end of the day, it's about clean energy. It's about giving the best to our next generation. And that's, I mean, and to them, that kind of like open up their eyes on how they view nuclear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's very complementary. It doesn't compete. You're right.
Yeah. We're not here to compete. It's not, it doesn't work that way because it's just that.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yes, thank you, Myra. So now can we go to our last young professional? It's Jeremiah Mbazor, the researcher from Nigeria. Are you on the line, Jeremiah?
Yes, I'm online. Thank you, Jeremy. So, my name is Jeremiah Mbazor. I'm a Nigerian. I have nearly a decade, about 9 years working experience in the nuclear industry and academic research. I've spent some time doing some lecturing work in some universities in Nigeria before proceeding to South Korea for my PhD. My current research is focused on reliability assessment of complex systems using parallel computing. I want you to worry less when your devices are on, because I provide you the confidence metrics for you to remain calm and enjoy your mechanical or whatever device you have on. It was out of the strong desire of my country, Nigeria, to overcome its energy conundrums, but the poor maintenance culture that we have exhibited for the years past has crippled this desire. My skill set is very valuable in almost anywhere you find engineering systems, and my current job as a researcher affords me the chance to travel and meet different people and cultures across the globe for relevant conferences. I believe it was because of one of those encounters I had with the panelists that afforded me the opportunity to feature as one of the panelists in this session. So I and some team of amazing folks back in my country, we're also planning to have the first Sub-Saharan African Nuclear Youth Summit, which is coming up very, very soon. So my main motivation of being in nuclear industry has been a thing of like, do I say a natural progression, because my background is physics. So it was interesting for me to see a field that I can directly apply the skill sets I've gained from my college and also build on them as well going forward and use it to meet the rising energy need in my country.
Thanks, Jeremiah. I think you've got a really interesting aspect to your story that you're in South Korea at the moment researching. Can you give us a picture of that? What's it like?
Well, coming from my country, it's a very big contrast, if I may say, because where we have a very large infrastructural deficit in my country and going to where everything is like basically running smoothly, like there is no blink of light. And right now I am in my country, Nigeria. At the present time I'm talking with you, there is no light in the community where I am. So that's to tell you the big shortfall that is being experienced. But back when I was in Korea, like the light hardly blinks. So it's a very big contrast. And then when you look at the infrastructure and the culture as well, and the lifestyle generally, it's a bit contrasting. But the interesting thing is that we have willing and able people who are able to carry out any given task when you give them the rightful guidance. That's the good and the lucky part that I find in this place. So making the comparison, it's a very large contrast in terms of development, but in terms of the people, I believe that we have equally motivated people who are willing to make progress in life, but the enabling environment has not been created for them, or do I say the leadership has not been actually well instituted, if I may say, to make the goal realizable in the measure that is desired.
Mm-hmm. This is a really excellent motivation to, you know, to create long-standing infrastructure for your country, and you've got the skills there. You're saying mechanical, electronic, structural systems. And South Korea is a great example because they booted up a lot of development with nuclear power at the heart of that. So I'm just really loving this story.
Yeah, it's particularly very interesting because where I did my master's degree, it was situated in a place where we had about 10 nuclear power plants. So I was breathing and like smoking and like waking, sleeping and waking amongst nuclear power plants. And that goes a long way to tell a story about those who have the fears for nuclear power plants and the attendant effect. I would say that somehow the fears that people have, it's not really the rightful fear. It's just kind of fear of the unknown. And when you come to look at it, the fear of the unknown is usually greater than the fear itself, like what you should fear about. It's just like people just fearing what they don't know. So it's kind of interesting for me who have lived in that kind of environment and coming back to where the people who have not had that kind of technology, there's likely going to be a kind of, I wouldn't say culture shock, maybe technological shock, maybe, if there is anything like that. So, having the knowledge already, I can be able to quell their maybe concerns if there is any that arises. Although currently in Korea, there are like the current policy is like tending towards going less nuclear and going more on the renewables, which I hope that with the current push to include nuclear as part of the new renewables will be a very good future for the nuclear industry. So the contrast is very, very big, and Korea, it's also giving a very good example for the developing and developed countries, especially in Asia, because currently the percentage of nuclear to their energy mix is more than 20%, and they are currently building the main contractors or the engineering consulting company for the Baraka nuclear power plant in UAE. So I think they are really like apart from China, they are like the beacon of hope, if I may say, for the nuclear industry. So I think it is also particularly encouraging for me to see and be in that kind of environment.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Jeremy, it's Kari. I see that you are quite the ambassador, and I see that you're involved in not just IYNC, but NYGN and other networking and professional groups. Can you talk to us a little bit about the summit that will be hosted by your country?
Oh, thank you very much. That's a very good question. The summit is going to be coming up towards the end of this year. We are still in the planning stage. So it's going to be the Sub-Saharan African Youth Summit. It hopes to bring together people who are interested in nuclear, professionals, and just people who are just inquisitive and just want to know about nuclear. And people in all walks of life are going to be brought together in Nigeria, Abuja. The location has been determined already to be Abuja, which is the country capital. So we hope to bring people, and I want to use this chance to also invite you and all the people in the panelist group to come to this program. We are planning very, very seriously about it, and we hope that it will raise the awareness about nuclear and the associated concerns. And I believe that the panelists and the people who are going to be speaking in this program will do a very good justice to nuclear and promote advocacy in that regard.
Thank you very much. I bet people can't wait to hear your story. I'm curious what you would say to people, young people who don't know much about nuclear. Why would you perhaps mentor them to get into nuclear energy?
Thank you for that question. Well, my motivation, I would say that being in the nuclear industry for me, it's partly circumstantial and partly like a decision I made as well, because as I was about, because in my country, when you graduate from the university, you have a 1-year service to the country, and then after that, you can go if you want to do your further studies or you want to go look for jobs. So my intention was to further my studies to get my master's. But in the process, I just stumbled on somebody, a friend, a family friend sent me, oh, there is something about nuclear going on and they are looking for people who are interested. So I just put in my, like, just reluctantly, I just sent in my application. And before I finished my service to my country, I was called to come take up the position. So that was how I entered the nuclear industry. So, and then going from then, it's been an enriching experience for me. And my background is physics, so it was natural for me to understand the fundamentals of nuclear, because nuclear, it's basically a combination of the basic sciences, nuclear physics, chemistry, and physical sciences and engineering all put together. So it was natural for me progressing in that line. And for younger ones who are coming up, I would say that it's a very challenging field, because the culture in my country is very, very not suitable for nuclear. But those who are in the industry will learn a lot, because the safety culture is, like, I would say, is the strictest amongst all industry, and that's the lucky part. So I've learned a lot about safety and how to make things reliable, because that's my focus. So being in the nuclear industry, you will learn a lot. There are a lot of aspects of it. So I would say that even if you are just inquisitive, if you are just passing by and you hear nuclear and it tickles your fancy, go for it. So if there is anybody out there who is listening to me in Africa or somewhere in Nigeria or abroad or wherever, and you are interested in Africa, or you want to say, okay, what is happening in Africa in nuclear? What's happening? I would say be encouraged. And if there is any company who is interested in investing somewhere in Africa or something, because the need is there, the market is there already. So I would say that the next frontier for nuclear after Asia, because they are already like setting the pace, I would say it's in Africa, and the hope is there. And given the rightful kind of leadership, I believe that it will provide the benefits, and it will outweigh the risk that we will, when we apply or when we go into building nuclear power plants in this part of the world.
Well, thank you, Jeremiah. I just want to react to what everybody's been saying in general. We've had 4 great stories from 4 ambassadors for the industry, I would say, from Kristine, Fabricia, Myra, and Jeremiah. They're completely different stories, different roles in the industry, from kind of international governance of it all, right into business, communication, and right into science as well. But they've got a lot of things in common. You know, the motivation to get things right in society in terms of development and environment, to do things right inside our industry, to reach a kind of excellent level of performance, and make the best of what we've already got and take that forward into the future, because just like Jeremiah just said, the need is there for nuclear energy and what it can provide. So yeah, I feel really good having just taken part in such a great international panel.
And I'm just going to jump in here, Jeremy, and agree with you 100%, and let everyone know that I am already getting stories in my inbox. So please keep them coming. It's amazing, and I hope this creates a groundswell of stories that we can take in and then respond back to and use, and so that we have storytelling about nuclear energy really compounding. That's great.
That is just absolutely great to hear. I'm really glad. Do we pass back now to Jordan?
Hi, everyone. This is Jordan Cox speaking again. Thank you so much to everyone who has participated and all the panelists today for sharing their stories. We have some time now at the end of the webinar to do some question and answers. We received quite a few questions from our attendees, so I just want to thank everyone for those. So I'll go ahead and get started with the questions, and I'll kind of pose them to the group. We can go kind of down the row, or people can just jump in with their answers. But the first question that we got multiples of it, but it was, you know, how do we engage the public and policymakers about nuclear energy? And this is kind of a broad question, but if we could maybe talk about your experiences with engaging the public and people that you've had the opportunity. A lot of the questioners, it seemed like, did a great job talking about how they've been engaged within their industries, but also sometimes how do we step outside of our professional roles, just engage the public writ large about nuclear energy.
I wonder if, Kari, would you like to take the first half of that?
Sure, absolutely. And that is what I work on with our team at the Office of Nuclear Energy. And one of the things that we're doing is engaging in bringing in different audiences to some of our events, and so that they really start to see through a series of clean energy talks that we're doing, sometimes at college campuses and sometimes in conjunction with other events, so that they can understand that nuclear energy is a critical part of the clean energy conversation. We're seeing here in the United States, the public is really grabbing onto state by state some of the renewable energy goals for each state, and now they're referring to them as clean energy goals, which is a wonderful transformation to hear. We've got 6 or 7 states that are already looking at it that way, which is very important, and it does require that we get these stories out about how nuclear energy is a big part of that conversation into the public. And so we are working, we work to engage the mainstream media as often as we can here in the United States.
On my part, I would add that I've really poured a lot of my own philosophy into my introduction to this exercise. You know, I really believe it's true that the nuclear industry is extremely small, and it has a lot of issues that a lot of the companies that use nuclear are not really 100% committed to it. They're also using other sources of energy, and sometimes they don't want to talk about nuclear because they have a hard time, and so they're very shy. But it just perpetuates the problem that nuclear is not really present in the national debate. So I mean, I really call on every nuclear organization to make an investment in representing itself to all the sort of stakeholders that are around it, and to invest in having a presence. Sometimes the utilities and the power companies are very good at this because they already have, you know, they actually own the sites, don't they? And they have millions of customers. But I really think it needs to extend through the entire industry because, as I say, it is a very small industry. If you're working in a company or in any organization that has a role in nuclear, it really needs to be investing in this kind of outreach, and I kind of take it personally, and I like to just make myself available to anybody who wants to talk about nuclear. I don't know all the answers, but in my time I've kind of seen all the issues, and I can talk about what's good about them, what's bad about them, and the reality of it. That's generally my philosophy. If we don't have any other answers, maybe you have another question.
Panelists want to jump in on that, or not really? We'll give you just a second, and then we'll go on to the next one.
Okay, can I say something?
Yes.
You were talking about, the question is about how policy affects the perception about nuclear, is it? So I would say from my own standpoint as a researcher, I think what we should do as researchers is to assure the policymakers through the work we are doing in our labs that nuclear is worth investing in. And I think the US is setting a very good example in this regard, because some startup companies are spinning off new technologies that are imbibing recent like mainstream technologies or ways of doing things, like the Kairos power and the Terra power and terrestrial energy, and some other new companies that are giving a new hope to nuclear. So I think it's it should rather not just be a concern to the policymakers, but rather be something that gives new hope, like it gives them more impetus to invest in nuclear, and to legislate or make laws that supports nuclear, because the climate change we are talking about, it's already upon us. So I think imbibing or adopting nuclear into the energy mix, it should just be natural to reduce the effect of the climate change, because the fossils are apparently not helping us as much, although they have high energy density. But nuclear also has equal and even more energy density than the proclaimed solar energy source. So I think it should be more clear to the policymakers that nuclear is the way to go.
Thank you, everyone, for your input on that. So I guess we'll go on to the next question, which is one of the things that people have been asking multiple times is, how do we get involved in IYNC? What are some of the ways that you interact with IYNC kind of outside of the webinar setting? What are some of the things IYNC does? And if I wanted to join, what would I do?
That's a great question. This is Fabricia here. Everybody is welcome to join IYNC. We have a bigger impact, the bigger our network. To get involved, there are many different ways. You can always contact your local NAYGN. You can reach out to us via LinkedIn, via Twitter. We do have a LinkedIn account that we keep up to date with all of our events. You can follow that. You can also look into our website. Both Kristine and I, and also Myra and Jeremiah, are very involved in it. So we have various events ongoing. We really do encourage you to reach out to us if you want to participate in any of the activities that we have listed on our website. I don't know, Kristine, if you want to add anything else to that. Kristine?
I'm not sure Kristine is still on the line, to be honest.
Yeah, well, that's okay. If anything, you can always email any of us, and we'll be happy to connect you with the local rep or include you in any of our global initiatives.
Okay, well, great, and thank you again for everyone who's participated in the webinar. For any questions we didn't have time to get to, we will connect you with those attendees after the webinar, and they can follow up via email. I'd like to quickly again say thank you to all of our experts and attendees for participating in today's webinar. We very much appreciate the time and hope that in return there's some valuable insights you can take back to your ministries, departments, organizations. We also remind you that there will be a webinar or link made available that you can view the webinar at a later time and share with your colleagues and friends. With that, please enjoy the rest of your day, and we hope to see you again at future NICE Future Initiative events. This concludes our webinar.